Okay, so if you're listening to this, I'm guessing you're busy.
Yeah.
Like really busy. Maybe it's work, maybe family stuff, or just, life these days. It's complex.
It is.
But you're still here.
Here.
Because that urge to learn new things, pick up new skills, that doesn't really go away, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's this like constant modern problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
We want to grow, we want to learn, but finding the time feels, well, almost impossible sometimes.
Yeah.
The source material we looked at really nails this, talking about that moment. Maybe it's a few weeks into having a new baby, total sleep deprivation.
Right, I can imagine.
And it just hits you, wow, I am never going to have free time ever again.
Right. And the thing that really stops us, I think, or at least makes it feel daunting, is this idea that learning anything properly takes, like, 10,000 hours.
Ah, the magic number.
Exactly. That number just hangs over everything. Learning to code, getting good at Spanish, even just, I don't know, playing the guitar. If that takes 5 years of full-time work, basically, who on earth has time for that? It makes you just want to give up before you even start.
It totally does. And that 10,000-hour idea, it's not just scary. It's actually, well, it's often wrong for what most people actually want to achieve.
Okay.
So our mission today in this deep dive is to really unpack that, challenge that number, and show you there's actually a researched way to get competent, genuinely competent, much faster.
How much faster?
We're talking about going from knowing absolutely nothing to being, reasonably good at a skill in just 20 hours.
20. Okay, that sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, there's cognitive research behind it,
Oh, yeah.
and we're going to lay out the exact 4-step method you need to actually do it.
All right, let's do it. But first, we probably need to tackle that 10,000-hour idea head on, because it's everywhere. It feels like common knowledge now, but the original meaning seems, lost.
Completely lost.
Yeah.
It originally came from studies looking at expert-level performance, really high-level stuff.
Not just being good at something.
No, not at all. The person behind it was K. Anders Ericsson, a professor down at Florida State University. And his research was very specific. He wasn't looking at weekend hobbyists.
Okay.
He was studying people in these ultra-competitive fields. Think pro athletes, world-class musicians, chess grandmaster.
They're the absolute peak performers, the best of the best.
Exactly. And what he found was that those people, the ones right at the very top, the tiny fraction of a percent, they had consistently put in roughly 10,000 hours of very specific, deliberate practice.
So if your goal is to be, like, the next Yo-Yo Ma, then yes, 10,000 hours sounds about right.
It probably is. It's like a decade of intense, focused work. But then
Malcolm Gladwell wrote Outliers.
right, in 2007. And that's when the nuance just kind of evaporated. It became a game of telephone.
How so?
Well, Ericsson's message was 10,000 hours to reach the very top of a super competitive field. But then it got shortened in the public mind. First, it became 10,000 hours to be an expert.
Okay, a subtle shift, but significant.
Then it got simpler still, 10,000 hours to be good at something.
And then the final step.
The final and, like you said, most paralyzing version. You need 10,000 hours just to learn something new, to even get started. And that last one, the research just doesn't back it up. It's simply not true.
So that number is the cost of getting into, like, the global elite category, not the cost of just getting good enough to enjoy something or use it effectively.
Precisely. And that distinction is critical for you listening right now. Are you aiming for world-class mastery, or are you aiming for, reasonable competence, something useful, enjoyable?
Most of us, I'd bet, are aiming for the second one.
I think so. So, okay, if 10,000 hours is for the elite, what about getting good reasonably fast? What does the science say about that process?
Right. How do we actually learn?
Well, cognitive psychology has looked into this a lot. Skill acquisition. And researchers, they love timing things.
Naturally.
So when you learn, any skill could be physical, like using a pottery wheel, or mental, like doing algebra. They measure how long it takes you to do a specific task.
And at the start, you're terrible.
You are. You're slow, clumsy, inefficient. Everything feels hard and takes ages. Remember the first time you tried knitting? Or maybe use some complicated new software? You're just flailing.
Totally. Painful.
But that's the key. Because you start off so bad, those first few minutes or hours of practice give you huge improvements. If you cut your time on a task from, say, 10 minutes down to 9 minutes, that's a massive 10% jump.
Ah, okay. So the gains are really front-loaded.
Exactly. They compound super fast in the beginning.
Right.
If you picture that graph, time taken
Yeah.
versus practice, it starts high and drops really steeply.
Okay.
Now, flip that graph. Instead of time taken, make the vertical axis how good you are.
Ah, the classic learning curve. Starts low, shoots up fast, then levels off.
That's it. That initial phase is where you go from, let's be honest, grossly incompetent and knowing it,
Yeah.
to actually making rapid progress. But, and this is important, that steep climb doesn't last forever. You hit a plateau. Getting that next 10% improvement starts taking way, way longer. Hundreds of hours, maybe.
But we don't necessarily need that plateau for most things. We just want that initial satisfying climb, enough to make the skill useful.
Exactly. We want to get past the fumbling stage. And the research suggests that getting from zero, knowing nothing, to being reliably competent where you're not making obvious, painful mistakes anymore, that takes about 20 hours.
20 hours.
Yeah.
Just 20 hours of focused effort. It still sounds incredibly quick for something like, say, learning basic conversational French or the fundamentals of graphic design. I mean, are we sure about that? Can 20 hours really get you competent?
That's a fair question. And it depends on what I mean by competence. It's not 20 hours to fluency, right?
Right.
Or 20 hours to becoming a professional designer.
Right.
It's 20 hours to being able to hold a simple conversation, order food, ask for directions.
Yeah.
It's 20 hours to understanding basic design principles and maybe putting together a simple flyer or web page that doesn't look terrible.
Gotcha. It's getting the skill to the point where it stops being mostly frustrating and starts being actually useful or enjoyable.
Yes, that's the turning point.
Yeah.
And 20 hours, that's doable. It's about 45 minutes a day for a month.
Even someone in that week 8 of new parenthood could
Yeah.
probably carve that out.
Maybe. But here's the big catch. Those 20 hours have to be smart practice. You can't just sort of fiddle around vaguely. You need a specific approach.
Which leads us perfectly into the practical bit.
Yeah.
The 4 steps to mastering those first 20 hours. What's step 1?
Step 1 is deconstruct the skill. You need to figure out what good enough looks like for you. Take learning photography. That's not one skill. It's huge. It's lighting, composition, editing, knowing your camera settings.
Right. Aperture, shutter speed, ISO,
Right.
all that.
Exactly. If you try to learn all of that at once in 20 hours, you'll fail. So first, decide precisely what you want to be able to do at the end.
Like, I want to take decent photos of my kids playing sports.
Perfect example. For
Yeah.
that, you don't need fancy studio lighting. You need to understand shutter speed to freeze action and maybe some basic composition rules. So you break the big skill photography into maybe 10 or 20 smaller sub-skills.
Hmm.
Then you ask, which 2 or 3 of these will give me 80% of the result I want? You focus your 20 hours laser-like on those.
Makes sense. Prioritize ruthlessly. What's step 2?
Step 2, learn enough to self-correct. Now, this is a trap, especially for people like us, people listening who love learning.
Uh-oh, cow.
We love the research phase. We think, I need to read 15 books on Python before I write my first Hello World.
Guilty as charged. It feels productive.
It feels productive, but it's often procrastination in disguise. Every minute spent reading about the skill is a minute not practicing the skill.
So what's the right amount of learning then?
Just enough. Find maybe 3 to 5 really good resources, a book, a video course, a tutorial, whatever, but consume them strategically. The goal isn't to absorb everything.
What is the goal?
The goal is to learn just enough so that when you are practicing, you can recognize your own mistakes. You know what good looks like, so you can spot when you're doing it wrong and adjust. It's about enabling self-editing during practice.
Okay, so the learning supports the doing, not replaces it. Learn the basic chords, then try to play them.
Exactly. Step 3, remove barriers to practice. Sounds simple, maybe obvious, but it's crucial.
Like distractions.
Distractions are huge. Your phone, the TV, email notifications, maybe even just a messy desk. Every time you sit down to practice, if you have to first fight off distractions, you're burning willpower you need for the actual learning.
Right. Willpower is finite. Use it for the hard part, the practice itself.
Precisely.
Right.
So identify what usually pulls you away, then use a little bit of effort up front to remove those things. Turn off the phone, close the tabs, clear the space, make it as easy as possible to just sit down and start.
Frictionless practice. I like it.
It makes a huge difference in consistency. Which brings us to the last step, maybe the most important one. Step 4, practice for at least 20 hours.
The commitment.
The commitment. This is about pushing through the initial pain.
Is the main barrier intellectual, like understanding the concepts?
Not usually, according to the research. The biggest barrier is actually emotional.
Emotional.
Yeah, it's that feeling right at the beginning, that horrible sensation of being clumsy, slow, just
Yeah.
bad at something. We hate feeling incompetent.
Especially as adults, maybe. We don't like looking stupid.
Nobody does.
Yeah.
It's genuinely unpleasant. That feeling is what the force calls the frustration barrier.
And that hits early on.
Oh yeah, usually within the first few hours.
Yeah.
And that's where most people quit. They think, oh, I guess I just don't have a knack for this.
But it's not lack of knack, it's just the standard emotional hurdle.
Exactly. So by pre-committing to 20 hours, no matter what, you force yourself over that hump. You stick with it long enough to start seeing actual improvement. And once you see improvement, the motivation starts coming from the results themselves, not just sheer willpower.
Okay, these 4 steps seem logical, practical. Let's see them applied. The source used learning the ukulele as a case study, right?
Yeah, brilliant example. Accessible, involves motor skills, musicality, a good test.
Inspired by seeing a master player, Jake Shimabukuro.
Right, pure genius level. But the learner immediately applied step 1, deconstruction. The goal wasn't Shimabukuro level mastery, it was just to play some recognizable songs.
Okay, manage the goal. What about removing barriers, step 3?
That was the first couple of hours, just logistics. Getting the ukulele as an electric one, apparently figuring out how to string it, how to tune it, dealing with the setup stuff first.
Smart, get that out of the way. Then the deconstruction, step 1, in practice.
That was key. Instead of trying to learn every possible chord, the learner looked at songbooks and noticed massive repetition. Most songs use the same handful of chords over and over again. The core skill wasn't hundreds of chords, it was maybe 3 or 4, played smoothly.
And then they found that amazing shortcut.
Yes, the axis of awesome bit. The comedy bands claim that with just 4 chords, G, D, M, and C, you can play basically every pop hit from the last few decades.
4 chords, G, D, E minor, C.
That became the 20-hour target. Just get really good at switching between those 4 chords smoothly. That's hyper-efficient deconstruction. The whole instrument boiled down to 4 hand shapes.
Incredible focus. And step 2, learning enough to self-correct.
Presumably, that involved looking up how to finger those chords correctly, maybe watching some basic tutorials on strumming patterns, just enough to know what right looked and sounded like.
Okay, so all 4 steps applied. What was the result after 20 hours?
The test was a live performance, a medley of pop songs apparently jumping between things like Journey, Bob Marley, even Gangnam Style.
Wow, quite a mix.
Yeah. And the point was, it worked. It was competent, recognizable, enjoyable for the audience, mostly error-free. It showed genuine competence had been achieved.
And that performance happened when?
Right at the end of the 20th hour of practice, bang on schedule. The theory held up beautifully.
That's a pretty compelling story. So, bringing it all back home for the listener,
Yeah.
for you, what's the big message here?
I think the biggest takeaway is what we touched on earlier. The main thing stopping you from learning something new probably isn't intellectual. It's not about natural talent or not having the gene for it.
It's the feeling.
It's the feeling. It's that fear of looking stupid, feeling clumsy, the sheer emotional discomfort of being bad at something initially. That fear keeps us researching forever instead of doing.
But now you know the time commitment isn't 10,000 hours to get started. It's 20, 45 minutes a day for a month. That's achievable.
Totally achievable. And you have the method. Deconstruct. Learn just enough to fix your mistakes. Clear away the distractions. And crucially, commit to those first 20 hours to push past the frustration.
Whether it's coding, baking, drawing, a language, the initial investment is manageable, the rapid improvement phase is real.
The science backs you up for those first 20 hours.
So the final question for you, the listener, is this. If the main thing holding you back is just that initial emotional hurdle, that fear of feeling stupid, what skill, something that really excites you, are you going to give those first 20 focused hours to?
What are your 4 chords going to be? Think about it.
Define that target, clear the decks, and commit. We'll catch you next time for the deep dive.